Today, I will tell you the story of the frugality paradox. In the 18th century, Dr. Mandeville of the Netherlands told an interesting story in the book, The Fable of the Bee. A swarm of bees squandered in pursuit of a luxurious life, and as a result, the swarm quickly thrived. Later, because this group of bees changed their habits, gave up the luxury of life, and advocated frugality, it led to the decline of the entire bee colony. The story of bees tells the logic of frugality, which is called the paradox of frugality in economics. In the history of Western economic theory, the paradox of frugality once confused many economists, but the economist Keynes saw from the story the positive effects of stimulating consumption and increasing aggregate demand on economic development. Inspired by this, he further argued the paradox of thrift. Keynes was the most influential economist in the 20th century. He made great contributions to Western economics throughout his life. He was once known as the savior of capitalism and the father of post-war prosperity. The paradox of thrift is the earliest theory he put forward, also known as the paradox of thrift and the contradiction of thrift. How to interpret this paradox? We all know that thrift is a virtue, and the most common way for individuals. If a family can manage the house thrifty, reduce waste, and increase savings, then the family can often get rich. However, according to Keynes' theory that total demand determines national income, thrift is not good for economic growth. In fact, there is a contradiction here. The more frugal the public, lower consumption and increased savings will often lead to a decrease in social income, because people's income usually has to use his consumption and saving, and consumption and saving change in the opposite direction. That is, when consumption increases, saving will decrease, and when consumption decreases, saving will increase. Therefore, if savings and national income change in opposite directions, if savings increase, national income will decrease, and if savings decrease, national income will increase. According to this view, increasing consumption and reducing savings will lead to an increase in national income by increasing aggregate demand, which will promote economic prosperity. Otherwise, it will lead to economic depression. From this, we can draw a logically contradictory inference. Conservation of consumption and increasing savings will increase personal wealth, which is good for individuals, but because it will reduce national income and cause depression, it is bad for the development of the entire national economy. The frugality paradox tells us that frugality reduces expenditures, forces manufacturers to cut production and lay off workers, thereby reducing income and ultimately reducing savings. Savings paved the way for individuals to become rich. However, if the entire country saves more, it will plunge the entire society into depression and poverty. In other words, when resources are not fully utilized and the economy has not reached potential output, only when every member of society consumes as much as possible can the entire economy get out of the trough and move towards a stage of fuller employment and economic prosperity. Keynes also explained that the increase in GDP caused by the increase in demand must be higher than the original increase in demand. This is called the multiplier effect. For example, demand has increased by 100 million, but the final increase in GDP must be greater than 100 million. This is because various goods are complementary, and all sectors of the national economy are related. For example, the rich bought a villa for 100 million, and GDP increased by 100 million. There must be a car to live in the villa, and it cost another 10 million to buy a car. Buying a car requires buying gasoline, buying insurance, and buying various services, using highways, maintenance, etc., and another 10 million. These expenditures alone have reached 120 million yuan. The 100 million yuan spent on buying villas has spurred the construction and decoration industries. The income of people in these sectors has increased, and the consumption has increased. The 10 million yuan spent on buying cars and related goods and services has also driven the income and consumption of people in these industries to increase. Housing and automobiles have spurred industries such as steel, cement, and machinery. Driven by this round of rounds, the GDP of the entire economy will definitely increase by more than the 100 million that originally bought villas. In this process, the economy develops, and all people, whether they are the wealthiest shareholders and executives, middle-income earners as managers and technicians, and low-income workers, will benefit. In economics, 1 plus 1 is not necessarily equal to 2. In other words, things that are good for a single individual are not necessarily good for all. In some cases, the savvy of individual members of society can be the stupidity of the entire society. The reality of solving the thrift paradox lies in the question of whether the economy is at a depressed level. In an ancient society, we are always in a state of full employment. Therefore, the more we use national products for current consumption, the fewer products we can use for capital formation. If output can be assumed to be always at its potential level, then the traditional theory of frugality is absolutely correct. That is, both personally and socially. In other words, the existence of the paradox of frugality is due to its specific conditions for social and economic development, and it does not mean that it is always the case. In short, we must look at the issues of thrift and consumption dialectically. Like Mr. The key here is a degree of control. Frugality does not mean not to consume, and consumption is not to waste extravagantly. We must vigorously promote rational consumption, and we must oppose blind consumption with confidence.